Hey guys, welcome back. Carlos here from Scarlet and Sable. I'm going to be doing weathering and lining on the model today. I've selected the backpack to do this on. This is the body of the model that I've already done it on, and I want to draw your attention to something. I used black paint to do the chipping, which is definitely a strong choice. And I mean strong as in it's a bold choice. I've never really used black paint before, and I wouldn't say I'm 100% happy, especially around the feet. Up around the top of the body, I started to kind of space it out more, and I felt like I got a much better result. And so there's two lessons there. Number one is that if you're doing this, you could always select a paint that's not black, like black brown won't be as bad. And I really could have used this color, I just kind of opted not to. But this is still a very viable color for chipping on light colors, 7822. I like that color a lot. I've used it, I pretty much use it all the time. I wasn't sure I was going to get the contrast that I wanted. I did two samples. I did a sample on the right boot and the left boot, one using the black brown, one using the black, and I felt that the black looked a little better. And then as I went along, initially on the feet, I tried to keep them as small as I could, but ultimately, you know, I still feel like I got a little too much. And then as I went higher, it started to come kind of back into a place where I wanted it as far as the amount and location of the chips. And that's mostly experiential. And if you have like a rule book or a cover handy of any of the Warhammer books, you can look at those and just try to emulate some of the chips that you have there. Fortunately, since I started on the lower part of the model, I didn't, you know, that definitely would be, the boots and whatnot are going to be more scuffed up, more banged up, more chipped up. So it's sort of, it worked out okay. I'm going to definitely apply some dirt or some mud or something to the boots eventually. So I think that it'll be fine. I just wanted to kind of, you know, we're all about honesty here. We're all about full disclosure. And I know that sometimes, like especially when I first started, I don't know where the picture is, but I painted a Death Watch Knight, and it was just like every single edge had chipping on it, and it looked crazy. And so I know that, and it still can happen. I mean, I feel like the bottom of those boots got a little bit aggressive. So it's just, and that's what I'm part of what I'm saying is that I definitely, this is a parental advisory moment, especially if you're under 18. Do not use black paint for chipping. You know, that's, I wouldn't even say it's advanced. I would just say that that's just, you're asking for trouble. And I did it anyways, knowing that. But, you know, like I said, I'll be able to bring it back, but just know that before you go into using black. And I'm still using it because I need to keep the consistency now. So one of the things that you want to keep in mind when you're doing this kind of stuff, and you as always are free to do you. So, you know, if you feel like something, you know, you need a big massive patch of missing paint, then by all means. But at this size, the chips are going to be tiny, almost invisible to our eyes. So try to keep them small if you can, and keep it to the edges. And especially if this is like, you know, this is kind of uncharted waters for you. You haven't practiced this, or you haven't done this before. Maybe you were thinking about doing it. Always, 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 always do less than you think you need. And just move on. Like hit a spot and then move on, and then you don't have to hit every inch of this, just a little bit here and there, and then see how it looks. You know, it won't look bad if you just have a couple chips here and there. It might just look like he's, you know, it's at the beginning of a battle or something, or he just hasn't really, you know, maybe he's a flute player. He's a Space Marine who's in the Space Marine band, and he doesn't really go to the front. When I was in the military. That's the guy that one of my instructors, when I was in class, he was like, you got to watch out for the band players because they're going to be on the pier waving at you when you're pulling out, and then your wife is waving goodbye and there's the tuba player, so a lot of wisdom. Didn't quite understand it at the time, but he sounds like he was talking from experience. Okay, so I'm just moving around here. I'm going to try to employ my advice for once and just keep it very, very minimal. You can always reevaluate towards the middle or end, and it's highly advisable to do so, especially early on, early on in your painting career or in a model. You want to make sure that things kind of stay somewhat restrained, and then maybe towards the end you see something that might need fixing. So you can go back and kind of make things right. And one of the things is that when you're painting, one of the things that I encountered when I was first starting is that I was always afraid of ruining paint jobs. I was always afraid of doing the wrong thing. But really, you gotta have some confidence, and you have to be bold, especially when it comes to doing lines and stuff. If you're tentative and you touch at the model, you just kind of wait and wait to apply the paintbrush to the model. The paint will dry out, and then you'll start to get frustrated, and you'll just, I don't know. That's one of the problems I had, is that I felt like my paint was always drying on the tip of my paintbrush. I was like, why are these other guys, able to do this without any problems, and I'm having these issues? And it's just because I was just hesitating it right at the critical threshold of applying the paint to the model. And I was kind of like, oh, is this the right place, or should I do it like this? And my paint would dry out, and it was super frustrating. And I realized it. And this is not this didn't just happen years ago. I mean, this is within the last year or so. I was like, oh, so the reason why I'm having trouble is because I'm not ready to commit to putting the brush on the model. So be bold, fellas. That's what I'm saying. Be bold, but have a plan and be sparing. Be sparing. Okay. So this is probably going to be it. I'm going to touch this guy right here, right there. I don't know if that's contradictory, to be sparing but be bold at the same time. I think that the most interesting man in the world would know what I was talking about. So one of the things that I did, and I realized I made a huge mistake, is that I used an enamel wash. Now, I don't want people to rush out and think that they need to pick up an enamel wash. You can see it in the corners. It does give a nice effect, but it's no different than what an oil paint would do, which is, instead of that solid, fine line going down the crease like an acrylic, it's more diffuse. It's more like just a buildup. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a buildup of grime right there. And I kind of feathered it out a little bit with the brush. So that's one of the things that I think is pretty cool about oil paint and enamel paint, is that you can get more of a grungy, kind of dingy effect, as opposed to just like a solid line. And that's a good look. That's a lot of people employ it to great success. So it's really up to you. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I sort of wanted to give it a shot. I wanted to kind of do something different on this model than I did on the last, because that's kind of how I keep my sanity when it comes to painting, is I like to vary things up. So I had just a few talking points, and then I'm going to get to the lining that I want to mention. Some of the things about so the reason why I'm saying all this, because I realize that I've been kind of proselytizing for oil colors, and I should stay consistent, at least in my message and in my usage. So you can see two little tins of paint right here. I believe the left hand is the enamel and the right hand is the oil. Now, a lot of hay is made again on words like pigment size, and I think that people with good intentions throw out words like pigment size, and model paints have this pigment size, and artist paints have this pigment size, and by default the hobby paint is finer because the hobby company says so. That's like marketing speak, in my opinion, and that's just my opinion. So there's nothing wrong with buying a purpose-made oil wash, or a purpose-made enamel wash. A good thing about buying a purpose-made enamel wash is that you don't have to really worry about the color so much. It's already pretty thin. I've added some mineral spirits to this so that it's more it's got a little bit more flow. Now you can see in here, I personally, like, unless there was like somebody who made the paint gave me like some sort of SDS from a laboratory that described shear size and micron, gave me the microns of the pigment. I mean, how can you really know what the pigment size is in paint? If somebody knows and can tell me in the comments, I'd appreciate it. But how can you truly know what the micron size is? And then if somebody told you that the average pigment shear size is 15 microns, I mean, what does that even mean? So if you can see, like, now if this is like big chunks in here, sure, obviously that's a different matter altogether. But really, can you tell the difference in pigment size between these two? I mean, this is the oil paint, actually, I believe. Yeah, because it's more reddish. I wasn't able to replicate it exactly. The oil paint slightly more reddish. But in my mind, and see, I shouldn't even delve into this, but I can see definitely some like what looks like grains or particles over here on the left. This is the enamel wash, I think. Yeah, this is the enamel. And over here in the oil paint, these are Winsor & Newton paints, and one of them is actually a student paint that I used. I used Winton Burnt Umber. So let me mix these up just to, and this is far from scientific. This is just, Carlos's casual armchair observation. So please don't sue me. And I haven't, there's nothing wrong with buying a purpose-made hobby product. I just want to kind of show you that you don't really, with a little bit of know-how, you can do virtually the same thing. So I've stirred them both up, and again, I'll swish them around. This is, I believe, the enamel paint because it's a little grayer, and you can see there's still some stuff floating around. That's a big one. I probably need to dissolve it. And in the oil paint, there's definitely, I don't know what those white things are in there, the white crystals, but I think both of these weren't perfectly clean before I put them in here, so there could be also some foreign matter in there. But if you just watch it kind of go across the tray, I believe you can see more grains in the enamel. And both are so small that, like, I believe the human eye is not going to be able to distinguish the size of the pigment. So again, the whole pigment size thing is, first of all, I believe, a little bit misleading, and second of all, almost a non-issue when it comes to this kind of stuff. So again, mine, I didn't get a perfect match, but it's pretty close. This is the oil paint is burnt umber, a little bit of raw umber, and a little bit of gray. I just wanted to kind of desaturate it a little because this one is a very dark shade of brown, or I'm sorry, a desaturated shade of brown as opposed to the more reddish burnt umber that I had in this side over here. And I'm not trying to take food out of these people's mouths. All I'm trying to show you is that you need to look at paint as colors, and as long as you're using a quality product, i.e. a hobby product or an artist paint, you're going to be fine. You don't need to worry so much about which brand it is or any of that stuff or pigment size. That's, in my opinion, just it's well-intentioned, but it's not really accurate enough for me in my mind. Okay, so that was, whew, what a talk that was. Okay, so let's see. I might do a little bit of lining under some of these scratches, and then I'll just do the wash. And I'll probably end up drying the wash out and then showing showing how to if it gets all over the place, how to diffuse it. And the wash consistency I'm going to be using is about 70% thinner and 30% pigment. And the paint I'm using for underlining is going to be Beharit red mixed with some white. So it's kind of a pinkish color. Okay. And it's important again to get under the chip. You don't want to get around it or over it. It may not look quite right. Let me make sure my cam. Man, my last video I was like, I've been doing this now for 2-3 months now, and I'm still it's really a struggle to keep the model in the camera, and it's somewhat frustrating sometimes because, you know, I'm doing these one take kind of videos, and then I've done 45 minutes, I've painted something, and then I go back and I'm like, oh man, half of that was like just my thumb wiggling around, and that's always disappointing. So I think I just need to like put like maybe like a manacle on the table, and then I won't be able to move my hand. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. Okay. So let's see. Get under there a little bit. If you wanted to add a little bit of variety, you wanted to add some, you could add some noise with just lighter colored scratches, just using the red paint without any black. Maybe some chips and dings. In the lining, I'll probably do that when I do the lining. Oh man, did I drift off camera? I'm cursed. Okay, here we go. One more try. Got a couple more spots to get, and then we'll move on to the lining. And I believe that the black worked okay with the red. I just needed a bit more, to be a bit more sparing on the lower part of the model. It got better on the upper part of the model. I also realized that I needed to make the chips somewhat more like long, like kind of like longer scratches. They started to look better to me once I started doing that. So that's another thing I think I'll adjust next time. All right. Oh, I got that. So just doing our normal kind of broken edge highlight. I don't know if I said it, but I think on one of the videos I recorded, I was like, I'm not going to do any edge highlighting. It's not going to, you know, and then I was like, oh, that doesn't look quite right. It was, I think it was when I was doing the non-metallic metal, it was just, yeah, I was suffering big time, so I needed to incorporate that again. And it definitely adds to the weathered and beaten exterior, so that's one of the things that I realized after my bold proclamation. Catch the top of that. And then once this is done, I will go back with some white. Oh, we got a little bit too much there. I'm going to try to correct this immediately because lately I haven't been, and then the paint's been drying. It's just been a little funky for me. So I'll finish up the edge highlighting, and then we'll do the lining after that. See you guys, welcome back. I'm going to paint in the noise that I mentioned. This is the edge highlight, and I'm going to use a little bit of the Beharit red mixed with white. Just put a couple little scratches in there, here and there. Nothing major. Just adding some slight variation, little tonal interest. Get a rinse, get a little bit more. Again, tip of pure white mixed with Beharit red. And it's okay if they aren't exactly the same color. That's, you know, fine. Kind of hints at the age and depth of the scratch depending on the color. I believe brighter being, you know, maybe a little deeper, or the red being superficial only. Still in? Yeah, we're still in. Need to check that more, make sure I'm staying nice and tight into the camera. Okay, now that that's done, look a little bit of white, do some edge, very edge highlights, and just a little bit of red. I don't want pure white because that'll be a bit too stark for me. Again, painter's preference, painter's choice. It all depends. In this, I'm really, I don't know, I think I'm just gonna hit a couple high spots, maybe kind of hopefully act like a, oh darn it, guess I was gonna say a bad word. Nope, not gonna do it. Not gonna do it, wouldn't be prudent. Okay, let's see, right here, up here. Oh, I think I missed completely right there. That was not so good. Okay, get here at the bottom. And I just drank some coffee. I think you can see that in the tremor that I have in my hand right now. So maybe not the best time to do this, but whatever. I'm gonna be going back onto my shift pretty soon, so I wanted to get at least a couple more segments filmed. A little broken edge highlight. Same thing over here. And I'll just do this all over. I'm not going to show the entire thing. And before I finish with that, I've gotten many questions about the type of brush I'm using. It's a Rosemary & Co. So this is a size 1 Rosemary & Co. Kolinsky Sable Series 33. This is the one I'm using, which is a size 0 Rosemary & Co. Series 33. They have smaller bellies, skinnier bellies than like a, this is a Scharf brush or a Winsor & Newton Series 7. And a lot of people ask about it, and one of the things that I like about it, initially I was like, well, no wonder they're so cheap, there's hardly any hair in there. But truthfully, like, I appreciate the skinniness of the belly now, because you get a much longer, skinnier point as opposed to these other types of sable brushes. So that's what I like to use. I kind of converted, had a pretty positive experience shopping with them. I ordered about 10 brushes, came out to about, I believe, 72 bucks, and then it was like 10 or 11 shipping. They were really good about making contact. There was definitely some shenanigans when it came to crossing into our country from the UK, but whoever's fault it was, the person at Rosemary & Co. took responsibility, and they followed up. They found out where they were, and I got them. I think it shouldn't have taken too long. Most people say they get them in about a week. Mine, for whatever reason, got hung up somewhere, so it took like 2 weeks. But either way, again, positive experience. The company took ownership of the issue. They found my brushes and they were delivered. So anyhow, I'm going to finish up the edge highlight, the broken edge highlight, and I will return for the lining and the finale.